This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Sean Preston.
Okay, so we're actually not starting. I'm going to do that one more time, so we're going to cut it out because I just want to make sure I don't botch this. Alex, is it Morin or Morin? If I'm French, how do you pronounce that?
Yeah, both are correct. You can say Morin for English, and if you were French, you would say Morin. So go with Morin. We're probably speaking to an English-speaking audience, so go for it. Yeah.
Okay, and then Marcy Barbaro.
Barbaro, yeah, Barbaro. It's real easy, Barbaro. Yeah, if you say Barbaro, that's the English pronunciation, and Barbaro is the Italian pronunciation. So it doesn't really matter, right? Like, just wing it, and we will make do.
Okay, let's rock and roll.
Okay.
This is the Good Neighbor Podcast, the place where local businesses and neighbors come together. Here's your host, Sean Preston.
Welcome, everybody, to today's episode of the Good Neighbor Podcast. Today, we've got a couple of really nice neighbors on with us. That is Alex Morin and Marcy Barbaro from Working Writers Co. What's going on, everybody?
That was a heck of an intro. I feel like I should be clapping. And
I know, me
like
too. The music, like, I love that it's you, me, Alex, and your mustache. Like,
yes.
There's so much going on in this podcast already.
Lots is going on. I got a story behind that, by the way. So I grew out the mustache only back in the pandemic.
Yeah.
And I never grew it. I know I can grow a mean mustache. So, and it was, there was a Movember. I've always wanted to kind of participate in that men's health the whole bit. So I'm like, okay, I'm going to do it. This is what's happening. So I grew it out. My girlfriend at the time loved it. So I kept it for a bit. And then after a while, things were kind of getting back to normal. It's like, okay, maybe I'm going to get rid of this thing. So I get rid of the duster, and then I immediately have a mob of people in my inner circle come over and go, thank you so much for getting rid of that. You look like a pedophile. And I'm like, why wouldn't you tell me I have broccoli in my teeth the whole time? Like, I would have shaved it off a long time ago.
Oh my gosh.
So I swore to myself, no, I'm never going to grow it out again. And then sure enough, I go to a camping trip with my now girlfriend at the time. I didn't shave for like 4 days before, and we were in the bush for like another 5 days. So we got 10 days. I'm Grizzly Adams all over the place. And she absolutely loved it. She says, just shave all of this off. And then I got nothing but compliments. And then here we go.
Okay, so you just proved our point. You just proved the whole basis for our company, Sean. And that is, we believe everyone has a story. We believe everyone's a storyteller. You're obviously an awesome storyteller. And that's why Working Writers Co. was formed, because we love stories. We're both professional writers, editors, speakers, and teachers. And we just want to draw stories out of people and help them put them in books.
That could be a major motion picture, Sean. We can help you. We can help you.
Oh my gosh, who's going to play the mustache? Jake Gyllenhaal.
Yeah,
Austin Matthews.
Oh, Austin Matthews could be good. I'd say Jake could probably pull off a pretty good mustache with that too.
It's a big role, Alex. It's a big role.
It is. I'll have to put some consideration into that.
Very cool. Well, let's unpack this a little bit. Let's kind of dive in a little bit more into detail. Okay, so you help people write books. Not before we go into the journey of it, but let's talk a little bit more about the business, and specifically, how do you find your clients? What kind of client is it? And what does that process look like? If I'm maybe thinking about writing a book, I want to put something together. What does that all look like?
Sure. We find our clients in a variety of ways. We typically use the old-fashioned way, which is prospecting, right? And speaking with a lot of people. So we do that through various channels like LinkedIn and through our social channels as well, meeting people. And we engage in conversation. And inevitably, as Marcy just mentioned, most people have a story, right? And so we like to hear that story, develop that story, and ask people if that's something that they'd like to do. Would they like to express themselves in that kind of a way? Because that's where our area of expertise is. And I would say we have a beautiful mix of a lot of our clients coming from those types of prospecting endeavors. Pardon me. And we also have lots of referrals. So people really enjoy working with us. The process has been transformative for most people. And so they tell their friends, they tell their contacts, they come across people who say, I'm going to write a book one day. And then they say, well, you got to write it with Alex and Marcy. And so from a variety of different ways, like most businesses, is how we get our customers. And it's been a joyous process thus far, and I see that methodology continuing and snowballing, Sean, in terms of just how long we've been doing it, how many more people we know now, and how confident we become in our offering to be able to prospect even cold these days. It's not a problem whatsoever.
What are some cool kind of stories you got from some people who maybe that was like a pipe dream for them, and then you guys came along, were able to take their vision, put it to light, and then like the reaction you got from them after?
It's remarkable because I don't know why, but as human beings, we still play small. We think, who's going to want to hear my story? Little old me, something that happened in my life. And we have one gentleman who, ended up 30 years in the banking industry and a leader, in his field. But when we find out that his mother died at 6 years old, he was the youngest of 6 children. They were all thrown into various orphanages and then were adopted into a family where there was terrible emotional and physical abuse. When you learn of his story of resilience, you're gripping this book. You can't put it down. And this just seems like an ordinary guy. We work with a few therapists who feel really compelled to get a message out about something. One was about the value of inner child healing. Another one is about relationships. I think she's calling it, she's still writing, she's almost done. I believe it's going to be called the 2-Hour Guide to a Badass Relationship. So we attract that type of person. People have done extraordinary things. One woman in our group has ridden a 2,200-kilometer bike ride twice to raise money for jack.org, a youth mental health organization. And of course, as if the bike ride isn't enough to write about and everything that was involved in that, we find out that the writer too inevitably has been on a personal journey. And when people work with us for generally 6 months, sometimes a little longer, we start to peel back the layers of the onion. And as a relationship of trust is built, they reveal more and more of what's on their heart. And that's when the stories become rich, memorable, vulnerable, truthful, and ultimately of great value to people who read them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, like you mentioned, the storytelling component, peeling back the layers, knowing more, going more in depth, or as my partner likes to call it, going deep in conversation, that builds that trust, that builds influence, that gets, that human connection to be, natural from that perspective. That's how it's always designed to be. And the more meaningful conversations that we can have together, that just makes us better human beings.
Yeah,
totally agree.
Exactly. That's how we spend all day, every day, working with our writers, pulling out more detail. Why are you telling this story? One of our writers is telling a story of a fictional account of growing up with a sister who has a physical disability and her point of view of growing up in that type of household. And, she's been extraordinary. We keep pushing her, give us more. Why did you say this? Can you go a little deeper? And it's fun working with fiction writers because sometimes we just sit around and dream up silly stuff and you never know how it's going to translate into a book. And when you start to see that cohesion, it's so rewarding for all of us, not just for us as coaches, but for the author to be like, this is getting good. Like I would read this,
And what's interesting, Sean, is Marcy brings up a good point, that we have writers who are writing fiction. And, one would think that when you're writing a book, the vulnerability, the honesty comes through in a nonfiction work, such as a biography or a memoir or a thought leadership book or a self-help book. But we find that as much honesty comes from writing fiction as well. So we operate on the premise that when you're expressing yourself through your experience or through experiences you want to have. And so even a fiction writer is investigating their subject matter on a level that's so microscopic that they end up learning and transforming regardless of the topic that they're tackling. And this is what makes our job so interesting. It's one of the things that makes our job so interesting is that we're afforded this ability, this beautiful gift of getting to learn what our writers are writing about. And so if we're writing about the banking industry, or someone's writing about agriculture, as we have somebody right now, it's a gift to be able to learn about it. And then to take someone who's writing a fiction book and delve into mental health challenges and examine those from different perspectives and make the characters real and the interchanges real between different characters. So I always say that it's just, we are so blessed to be doing what we do. We love what we do. And the learning is a two-way street. The writer is learning and transforming, as are we as book editors, as book coaches. That's a phenomenal job.
Yeah, I could totally relate to that because Jeff and we do about 70 to 80 podcasts a month.
Wow.
We meet a lot of local business owners, and then we often will sit down with them after the show, and we'll talk about that on the other side. And so we get to learn about all of these different industries. And I've sat down with over almost coming up on about 250 different businesses and learning all about, the different industries. And then also too, like how they all kind of connect and who's a good referral partner, who would be a good alliance partner for somebody. And there's been a lot of self-growing on my side, exactly with what you're talking about. I literally have lived through that just by doing my own job. So I can totally relate to that.
And Sean, you use the word alliance, like you begin to formulate this catalog in your mind of all these guests you've had on the podcast. And we do likewise with the writers that we coach, and also with the guests that we have on our program. So we coach twice a week. One is always a craft lesson, and the other one is a reading lesson where we read our work and critique it as a group. And that network of people continues to grow, right? And it's through those alliances that we're able to grow our business too. So, we talk about cold calling, we talk about channel marketing, we talk about referrals, but your alliance is equally as important when it comes to business, because when you trust one another, you're feeding one another business. We have a beautiful alliance with Courtney St. Croix from Lead Her Publishing, and she's just phenomenal at what she does. And so when someone approaches her and says, "Oh, I'm going to write a book, can you help me publish it?" She says, "Well, you got to write it first. Talk to Marcy and Alex." And when we finish the process, we say, "Go talk to Courtney, because she's amazing at publishing." So, these are relationships, as you say, alliances that you build along the way that end up growing your business, growing your network, and then consequently growing you as a human being, because you're richer. The more people you know, the more you share with your peers.
Totally. I can't wait to rub this podcast in Jeff's face, because he's going to be so jealous. He's all about the high quality, conversation, meaningful, deep connection conversation like the one that we're having right now. I cannot wait to talk to him after this.
Shouldn't have missed us. Well, that's okay. We'll just have to meet for lunch. Yeah. Because really, ultimately, it's about service, right, Sean? And that's what we're about: connecting people who need to be connected to each other, helping everybody serve their purpose. So our vehicle happens to be books. Writing books, publishing books. But there are different vehicles. There's speaking. There's even something like a podcast interview. So we can connect a writer to someone who's got a podcast that is in line with the subject matter of their book, and line up a guest for a podcast. We're going to do that, right? It doesn't cost us anything but a bit of time. And ultimately, the more that we serve, the better we are at what we're doing. And that's where the rewards come in, right?
Trust and influence. 100%. So what's the journey been like for you two on how you guys got to what you're doing today?
Well, I'll start with my part. Is that I've been I'm a trained journalist. I've been a freelance writer and editor off and on my whole life, and have a literature degree. And during the pandemic, I was like, hey, I think I'm going to finally sit down and write this book that I've talked about writing my whole life. And I started a little before then. I had a ton of notes. Anyway, despite being a professional writer, despite being a trained writer and educated, it was painful, boring, isolating. I had no one reading my chapters. This is before I even knew Alex. And I just hated the process of writing a book. I love having a published book. My book's on Amazon. It's called Beautiful Humans. There's Nothing Wrong with You. And it's a great little read, but I couldn't finish it. It was so hard to finish it. And then just on the tail end of things is when I met Alex. And I was going to let him tell the story. In fact, he can jump in. But I basically chased him down. I was like, dude, will you please start a company with me to help people write books? Because no one should have to suffer as much as I did. And Alex actually did one of the final edits on my book. And if it wasn't for him, I think it would still be sitting, on my laptop as opposed to on Amazon, where you can find it now.
Yeah, it's been a heck of a journey, Sean. And you've got a little insight now into how the company started. And I'll say that the rest of the journey has been a myriad of all emotions, every single one of them. From jubilation to signing a new customer, to heartbreak of losing one, to learning how to market your business and be visible, to upping your service levels, to struggling with tax implications and all kinds of things. Every day is a learning opportunity, every single day. And I would say it spans the gamut of emotions, from negative emotions to positive emotions. So, but I think what we've come to realize and who we are as partners we are people who support one another, and we support our ecosystem as well. But we realize that the negative and the positive are all part of the entire experience. So when you talk about that journey, you're like, well, tell us a little bit about the journey. I'll tell you that there are days that hurt, and there are days that are tougher than others, but there are days that are absolutely exhilarating. And that mirrors what I would experience in my personal life. So, I've got 3 kids and a wife and a family that goes beyond that. And we've seen the heartache of injury and illness and death. And we've also seen the beauty of birth and life and teamwork and camaraderie. And it's no different in a business. You just have to learn how to live in that reality, how to live in that life, and become really good at that reality. And I think that's the journey we're on today, as we're becoming better and better as business owners. And consequently, we're raising our vibration as human beings. And that connects beautifully to our personal lives. In fact, sometimes there's very little delineation between it. Marcy and I have meetings almost every morning. And some of those meetings have nothing to do with business, but we believe they have everything to do with business. When I know how Marcy's feeling, or she knows how I'm feeling, and we end the call and we haven't said a word about our business, it's like, that was a great phone call. I'm aligned with my partner. I'm ready to go. Let's do this. So the journey's been eye-opening from many perspectives in terms of what I thought business would be and what it's ended up being. And I'm sure Marcy would probably echo some of those comments.
Yeah. Sorry, go ahead, Sean.
I was going to say, I just want to send this podcast to every single one of my clients and say, just listen to what he just said, because I've been saying that since day one. Every time I sit with a client, mandatory, right? We do marketing on the side. So when we sit down with a client, mandatory once every 3 months, that's just, we can't partner if that's not the case, because I don't have a pulse on your business. If I'm going to be a marketing consultant for you, I need to know. But I want to see you on a monthly, or at least a bi-monthly. Bi-monthly, I'm cool with that. And if you want me every month, hey, even better. But I say the conversations that we have sometimes won't be anything about business. It's just going to be about building our relationship. And because it's a partnership, you're not just buying something from me, you don't see me again. You could use my brain and what I have up here to strategize on what's going on. And I'm a bit of everything to any one of my clients. I'm a consultant to one. I'm a therapist to another one. I drink beer and eat steak with another one. I play video games with another one, right? And everybody's different. And I loved what you just said about, how sometimes you're having these conversations, not anything about business, but it is. And right before I came on the podcast, I was even talking about Jeff, because we're talking about what we want to do with the podcast. And, we said this year, we're going to keep the foot on the gas and go hard. But then we also realized at the same time, we only can go as fast as how many people we can have on the show. But we don't want to burn out. So finding that harmony, as he likes to call it, because it balances, it's not perfect, but having that harmony between all of it to make sure hey, you know what? On Wednesdays, I'm blocking off, this X amount of time, I'm going to walk my dog. Right.
Yeah.
And being a business owner allows us to be able to do that. And, he's a big book reader. And so, he's reading a book now of, 8 hours straight. What's more productive, or 3 hours with a 2 hour gap, and then do another 3 hours after. Most would argue it's actually the latter, that you're more productive from that standpoint.
Yeah, that is something that Alex and I are so passionate about and have been from day one. Luckily for us, we met in a very high-end sort of business mindset training. So we met at a level where we know we are in control of our thoughts. Our minds are going to govern, what manifests in reality for us. So we already met having these kinds of conversations. But as business partners in 3 years, we haven't exchanged a crossword. We are just so in sync with each other. And I talk about this sometimes, like building an emotionally mature business, right? And Alex always says to me, what's happening is exactly what's meant to be happening right now. Like, we're just going to ride it out, like good times, bad times. Like, sometimes it's like bing, 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 sign client, sign client, sign client. We're like, woohoo, we're really at the top of the world. And then other days you're like, hi, crickets, or we're just working with a writer and we can't get this writer to move. We can't get them unstuck. It might be an imposter syndrome. It might be they have an illness in the family and can't get back to their manuscript. There's so many things that can go on. And we just don't believe, there's two things we don't believe in. Number one, we don't believe in struggle and we don't believe in hustle, right? We just keep that nice groove, just keep it flowing, keep the belief flowing, hold space for people when they're down, gentle pushes, respect, these kinds of things. And when we work from that place, there aren't too many horrible days as a business owner. We're just like, it's all good. Let's just do what we're going to do. And we always end up on top. We always end up working with, or I should say, attracting the most extraordinary people to us.
Mm-hmm. That's what it's all about. And I'm making a little minor kind of adjustment here on how I'm going to torture my partner, as I'm not only going to say, hey, here, watch this, but I'm going to make sure I'm present so I can watch him squirm while he watches this, because the conversation's so good.
So he's our kind of guy too. I love it. I love it. Well, you know what? There's nothing to say we can't hop on a Zoom call later and speak privately. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, we've got that symbiotic kind of relationship like you guys have, where we're opposites in certain aspects. He's a big book guy, big reader. I'm the opposite of that. You kind of really be hard for me to dive my nose into a book. My brain doesn't work that way. Yeah. But I learned the best from somebody who wrote a book and just tell it to me.
Right on. There's a million ways to learn, aren't there?
Yeah.
And you just got to find what resonates for you. And then go for it, right? Life is about learning and using that knowledge and expanding.
Yeah, I never really kind of understood how much of a learner I was until I started doing what I'm doing now. And now I let the curiosity run with it. And it's just so cool to see, how much when you take it over time, right? You expand over time, how much knowledge that you've accumulated and what that's done for your life, how that's changed your life, or how you can leverage that information to help others as well.
Such a fascinating observation of yours, Sean. You use that word curiosity. You let your curiosity guide you now. You say in a podcast interview, and it's like, oh yeah, I've got a set group of questions, but if I'm on a roll here, then I'm just going to ask you about something, and that satisfies my curiosity. Consequently, I learn. I become greater than I was before the interview. We agree with that. And that principle applies to book writers, right? So we encourage people to indulge their creativity, indulge their curiosity. And we take great pains to make sure that our Tuesday night lessons always incorporate some kind of an exercise whereby people are exercising that muscle of creativity and indulging that curiosity, because it's from the unknown that magic happens. And I'm sure you've heard that before from many speakers, but we firmly believe this. And so when you don't have a preconceived notion of what you're actually going to write or where it's going to go, and you leave some openness, then that's where the magic really happens. And we see that time and time again as we teach people the art of harnessing the creativity that's completely and totally within them. It's within everybody. And we just have to help people unlock it so that they can produce magic. So, your experience as a podcaster and as a business person and as a friend, really mirrors what the creative journey is like for a writer. And it's no surprise to me that there's these similarities and these synchronicities. Everything in the world is connected, from the soil we walk on to the books we read to the people we meet. It's all connected, and it's just a matter of understanding those connection points and being able to use them for the betterment of yourself and those around you and the community at large, ultimately.
100%. Are there any like myths or misconceptions that people have when it comes to, writing a book or maybe approaching, a company to help them professionally?
Definitely.
Yeah, I think I'm not a big fan of the book outline. Like, we have to create an outline, so we kind of know where we're going to go. But every writer we've worked with, has taken a 90-degree turn at some point. The book has morphed and changed. And again, I think it comes back to those gripping the reins of control. And instead, you're coming into it, you're going to write a book. We know you're going to write a book because you're working with us, and we're going to see to it that you get finished, because that's our job too, holding you accountable. But I think I would say to wannabe writers, I always say to people, what do you want to say? What do you want to say? What do you want to say? And we always come back to that. And guess what? That's going to change over the 6 months that you're working with us. So don't think you got to have it all polished and all laid out and all your notes made in this big complicated spreadsheet or mural board or anything. Because guess what? Creativity, as we say, embracing the unknown, creativity is messy, and that's how it should be. And I always say, don't cinch the garden hose of creativity, meaning don't be too tight. Don't approach things with too narrow of a perspective. Because when you land with us and you feel safe and supported and seen and heard, who knows what's going to come out of your subconscious? Who knows what direction we're going to go? So I would say that's a big myth. I would say don't embrace your outline too tightly.
Yes, that's such a good hint, Marcy. And it's counterintuitive, isn't it? I mean, you think that when you're writing something, I got to have this great outline and I'll create from the outline. But what Marcy's suggesting is that, yes, you need to have some kind of an idea of where you're going, but allow some space for the creativity and for the magic to occur. And I'd like to highlight one more misconception. And it's the misconception that your book's going to make you millions of dollars because it's going to be a bestseller. And that can be true. And I want to be able to explain that counterintuitive thought process a little bit more in depth here, just for a second. It's possible to be a best-selling author. We have best-selling authors who have worked with us. That's great. That can happen. It's possible to make a ton of money from your book and book sales. But we limit ourselves when we believe that that is the only way we're going to recoup our investment in writing a book. Book writing takes time. That's an investment of a resource that's very precious. Book writing can take money in terms of, hiring book coaches like me and Marcy, or hiring a publisher to get it done, right? So you are looking at this sometimes as a business, and how do I recoup this investment? What's my ROI on the book? And a lot of people think, well, it's going to come from book sales. And at $7.95 or $14.95 a book, you're not making millions of dollars unless you're selling tons of copies, because you're going to net out all of the expenses. So what we like to say to people is expand your horizons and think about the myriad of ways that your book is going to return an investment. And we're talking specifically about the transformation that's going to occur, who you're going to become as a human being, and what that's going to mean to your family, what that's going to mean in your business dynamic, whether you work for somebody or whether you work for yourself. You could potentially turn your book into a visibility tool that creates a whole business out of offerings that come out of your book: coaching lessons, interviews, mentoring, keynote speaking. There's all kinds of ways that you can return and recoup your investment. But one of the big myths about writing is that writing is about becoming a best-selling author, and that's the definition of success. And it's only a sliver of the definition of success if that's what you define as success. Success is what you deem it to be. So if I say, this is what I'm looking to do, and this is what I want to accomplish, and this is how I want to grow, now the world's your oyster, and you stand a much likelier chance of accomplishing what you want to accomplish with that book.
Very well said, man. You're right within my wheelhouse. I'm talking to people about this all day, every day, man. It's like, you sit down, I sit down with a lot of small and medium-sized businesses, okay? And some of them everyone's got their degree of understanding of marketing and advertising.
Mhm.
Right. But there's a lack of knowledge and understanding of marketing and advertising, generally speaking, but specifically when it comes to branding and when it comes to lead generating. And so there's often conversations I have with people where they'll say, well, I want an ROI on that. And I love that conversation. It's one of my favorite conversations to have because number one, it doesn't belong anywhere in the realm of marketing. It came from the financial world. Somebody used it. Now it's this thing. People think they know what they're talking about. So they throw that out there. And it's like, well, just because define me what success means to you. And oftentimes it's like a fish out of water, like, I can't, I can't breathe anymore because I don't know what that means. I'm just regurgitating words and I think I know what they mean. And to echo what you're saying, like success means a lot of different things, but a lot of people attribute success to I'm busy or it's a financial tie-in to that as well too, when success means a lot of different things. And we're talking about branding your business, and in 5 years from now, you could afford to put your kid through school. You're not working in the business, you're only working on the business. You get your weekends to yourself. Before, when I first met you, you were grinding it out 6-7 days a week. What does success now look like to you? And that was very beautifully and so eloquently put on defining that success to people when they write their book, and saying it's not only have to be a bestseller. What about the pride? What about the connections you can make, how it makes you be a better human because of the book that you wrote?
Yeah, right on, Sean. Absolutely.
Okay, so when you guys aren't doing the really fun and cool and awesome shit you're doing every single day, helping people write books and storytelling and all this stuff, I could go on for another 2 hours. We're setting the record, Jeff. I'm telling you right now, we're setting the record for the longest podcast on GNP. It's happening right now. I'm about halfway through. Tell us, what do you guys like to do for fun when you're not doing what you're doing every day?
Wow, that's great. Well, you know what? I just moved to Midlands because I love to paddleboard, and I also love to hike, and I love to get out on trails, and I love to snowshoe in the winter if I can get out there before the sleds come and pack everything down. But you know what? I just I wanted to be in a small town, and so I left a larger place to come here. And I've just for the last 6 months been renovating this little house I bought. So it's being a creative being, it helps you with decision making as well. And so I'm like, okay, this is where I want to be. This is how do I get on the water more, put myself with more water around me. And so that's how I landed here. Those are just some things I love to do.
And Midland's a great little spot, man. It's a great little nook up there. Lots of stuff to do. I love all that stuff that you like doing. Man, my family and I, we snowshoe in the Copeland Forest and the Simcoe County trails.
Nice.
We'll take, I got a 3-year-old Australian Shepherd. So, he loves all that stuff. And he's a big winter dog. So, up and down in the snow the whole bit. He'll come around with us and do all that fun stuff. And paddleboarding is something I haven't done a whole lot of, but definitely on my list of things that I'd like to do. It's a lot of fun.
I'll teach you. I'm a good teacher.
Perfect.
For me, it's fun and passion definitely intersect, just like the both of you. And I really enjoy cooking and eating healthy and learning more about health. One of our writers right now is chronicling her breast cancer journey, and she decided to embark on a holistic health journey in addition to a Western medicine approach. And it's a beautiful book. And I have learned tons just editing that book and working with her. And so I'm incorporating all kinds of things from her book into my life. She was the person who introduced me to the concept of going to get your water from a spring instead of, taking it out of the tap. And I've known this for years, but I just, didn't know where to start. And with her help, she sent me an app. I think it's findyourwater.org or something like that. I'm sure I got it wrong. But I was able to find a source of water not too far from where we live. It might be a 15-minute drive. And we take the drive up once a week now. And, when you say, what do you like to do for fun, Alex? I like to go get water. I find it amazing. I find the whole experience of getting your own water, and getting water that's beautiful and non-chlorinated and no fluoride in it and high in minerals is just exciting and invigorating to me. So that's a little bit of fun for me. And the other one is traveling. I just spent 2 months in Portugal in the months of January and February with my wife and our youngest child. And it was amazing. I was able to work while I was there in the business, on the business. And I was able to find a beautiful, beautiful balance, or what you might call harmony. And I loved it. I loved every single second of it. So those are some of the things. There's lots of other things that I like personally, but those would be two of them.
We might be the same human being, Alex, because I'm picking up what you're putting down. My significant other has had her bout with cancer as well. And so they, gave her, her alternatives, and the one she took was the path of through diet. And so in meeting her, being with her, we've learned a lot. I've learned a lot about food, about what goes in our food. I watched a documentary on Netflix called "You Are What You Eat."
Yeah.
That one was a really good one, which really opened up my eyes to not only what's going on with, the cattle and all that other stuff, but really like just the type of plant-based food, what that does in the body, the nourishment of what it comes. So in the pandemic, I became a green thumb. My mom's always been a green thumb. I'm in a family of bunch of women, got 2 younger sisters. I have a 17-year-old daughter, plus my girlfriend. I'm just surrounded by them. I got the dogs and my dad. That's really, we're outnumbered from that perspective. And so when the pandemic hit, like everybody else, we had nothing to do. And so, I find myself hand plucking about 748 dandelions out of my front yard, first and last time that'll ever happen.
Did you make tea out of them, Sean?
I did not. I did eat one once.
Okay. All right.
Swigged it down with a beer, and then that never happened again after. And so my mom turned me into a gardener, and so just on the last on Sunday, Julie and we sat down and planned out, what sections of garden and what plants mesh well together, partnership vegetables and stuff like that, and we try to grow as much as we can on our own. We try to buy local as much as we can. But it's that fulfillment that you get that I could see when you're talking about the spring water there's a fulfillment there when you're going out and kind of like our ancestors did. You go out and get it yourself instead of, just somebody always just kind of, bringing it to your door or giving you like the wrong type of nutrition. And knowledge is power, right? So knowing what we're putting into our body, what that does for us, that goes a long way to living a long and happy life.
Not just that.
To our hearts here.
Yeah, for sure. I think the concept of nourishment as opposed to being fed is very different, like nourishing yourself with good people, good conversation, the quality of air, the quality of water, the quality of food, the experience with which you eat it, that kind of thing. Nourishing yourself is such a fascinating topic. And I don't know that enough people are nourished. And, when you nourish yourself, you're better able to nourish others. And that's, a big secret. So I love it. That's congratulations to you guys. I want to see pictures. I want to see pictures.
And I want to expand upon that also, Marcy. And so, Sean, you're getting a picture of how Marcy and I work together. We just have a genuine love for one another and respect one another's ideas so much. And so the creativity often just comes off of something Marcy says or something I say, and then we end up moving on that. And Marcy talks about nourishment, and it segues so nicely into a conversation about business. You can be nourished from your business. You can be nourished as an employee in a business. And for a while, I was doing consulting after I left the corporate world. And it was my goal and my intention to teach people that you could be completely self-sufficient, completely autonomous, completely in control of your freedom while working for somebody, right? Because that's a really, really tall task for someone who's consulting and you're working for a company, and then you're showing people and teaching people about freedom. Well, you can have it all. And that's what we like to call nourishment. When you realize philosophically that you do have it all, and you can create your life however you want to create it, and view it from a beautiful loving perspective, then you're nourished at all times. And look, it's not easy to do that every day. I have hard days. Marcy has hard days, and it doesn't look like this interview every day. But this is what we're working on. This is our life's mission, is to create a business that lives and breathes this philosophy, and to share that knowledge and help people with their projects, and thereby nourish them and nourish us at the same time. And the more we do that, we attract people like you, and we become friends with someone like you, and our network grows, and your network grows, because our network is your network, and your network is now our network. And that's a great thing. It's rubbing off on everybody, and we're all being nourished. And so, this concept that my partner Marcy talks about right now, nourishment, is something that we could easily riff on and say, yeah, like that's the essence of what we do, is we nourish ourselves and those around us.
Yeah, I could talk about that all day. Talk about that to clients. Our connection, your connection. We're literally human connectors and putting people together. And it's not about what you know; it's about who you know. Yeah. And those people, and collectively putting people together, whether it be from an intellectual standpoint, whether it be from a workplace standpoint, what they do for a living, the nature of their business. When you're putting it all together, that's when you're building that. But you could call it an empire, you could call it friendship, you could call it a lot of different things. But that's what gets people to move forward in life, and making those right connections, real connections. I think that's something that a lot of people here in Barrie cherish. I think you could also encompass Simcoe County into that. But Barrie specifically, a lot of people safeguard that. And our business community here is absolutely fantastic. Everybody's always here to want to help one another. And they're just, generally speaking, so nice. I did 9 years in the car business for an automotive marketing firm, and dealt with a lot of automotive dealers, especially down in the GTA. And not just them specifically, but just a different type of person than you would get from up here in Barrie. And albeit we're very diverse, very multicultural up here as well too. It's just a bit different in a sense, where you still got those kind of small town vibes, and a lot of people know a lot of people here, and it's a pretty special thing.
Yeah, it's fascinating. You could do a scientific study on that, and you could take a look at the green space that exists in your area. Is that conducive to a different way of thinking, to a more relaxed state? You could look socioeconomically at people as well, and you could say, well, it requires a little bit more help in our community here, given what we make and what our resources are. There's all kinds of ways you could really analyze that from a scientific perspective, and they're all valid. There's probably a million reasons why you're experiencing what you're experiencing, but it's interesting to me. And these are the things that we write books about, right? Like that we would speak to someone and they would say like, oh, I'm thinking about this. And we'd be like, that's a fascinating story. Let's talk about it a little bit. And then before you know it, one example is a fellow who we're working with, and he is a climatologist. And my gosh, what we've learned from him and been able to project into our own communities has been so valuable and so interesting. And we can't wait for him to finish this book and launch it to the world, because it's something that everyone needs to read. But he talks about some of the things you talk about. He talks about what makes an awesome community, Sean, and the diversity, the green spaces, the art, the culture, the transportation, everything. And it's amazing how holistic this book is. We can't wait for it to come out.
Very nice. Very cool. So in life, we, especially since we're on the topic of all this kind of stuff, we always kind of try to set ourselves down a path that we think is the right path for us. And we're walking down this path. But oftentimes life is not that way. It decides what it wants to do when it wants to do it. And we're just this microcosm in this bigger picture. And so sometimes it'll push us and pull us, or it'll put us on a different path, or it'll show us or put in front of us life challenges. We go through hardships as human beings. And I've always been fascinated at the perseverance that we have as human beings, at being able to overcome things. Especially the mind is such a powerful thing, and how we're able to take silver linings from these things to help us, push past those barriers. And so I'm curious to ask you guys if you've ever experienced a hardship or a life challenge that you overcame, and maybe some silver linings from it.
Wow, that's such a great question. I think that we have to understand that there's generational trauma, and then there's more immediate trauma. There's things that we all encounter. There's addictions, and there's mental health challenges that different people have, and sometimes we're caught in the maelstrom of all this. And for my part, sometimes I've been very confused in life. Am I part of that maelstrom? Am I able to step out of it? Am I able to break patterns? And so for my part personally, I have spent probably the last 3 years, longer as well, because I taught yoga and meditation for years, studying the central nervous system and understanding what moves us from fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, and moves us to a state of calm relaxation. Because we do know that when we're reacting to something, all of our, so much of our energy has gone into the strength in our muscles, a quick reaction time, sharp thinking. So in order for those processes to happen, then other essential processes in the body must shut down, like digestion, elimination, like oxygenating our bodies well, oxygenating our cells, like creativity, like unique thought processes. So when we're always fighting, scrambling, surviving, guess what? We're not really growing. We're reacting because the central nervous system is essentially frozen or panicked or something. And so once I started to have a deep understanding of this, then I learned how to completely take charge of my experience and my reaction to anything that comes my way like that. Like, if you have an argument with someone or a disagreement with a family member, or in business, a transaction that doesn't go well, you're able to step back and say, it's not personal. What's happening in my body? Well, my central nervous system is reacting right now, and I'm not being my best grounded, spiritual, full of love self. So responsibility number one is to take charge of that reaction. You can use the breath. You can go out in nature. I mean, we have the water's edge everywhere in Barrie. We can get to the water, all these things that we can do, but it's my responsibility to ground myself and bring myself back down so I can take the adrenaline and the cortisol offline, so I can slow my heart rate, so I can slow my mind, slow my reaction time. And now, who am I at the core? What am I about? Who do I want to be? And now move forward from that place. So to me, that's a journey I've been on. I practice each time there's an upset to ground myself more quickly and return to the person that I want to be, instead of a reactionary self that is actually, the lizard brain in action, as opposed to the essence of my being, who I am. This, educated, grounded, spiritual, loving being. She's gone in those moments, right? So that to me is fascinating. Alex has heard me speak of this so much, but to me, once you start to recognize that self-management that's required, your responsibility, and also your ability with it, then really everything starts to become easier and life becomes richer because of it. So that's sort of where I'm at.
Kind of like that flow you were talking about.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I want to be in it, right? I want to be in that flow as much as I can in this life, because that's the sweet spot.
Very cool. How about you, Alex?
Well, I will say that my biggest challenge is probably my most vulnerable spot. And had you asked me this question last week, I would have said that the biggest challenge I've ever incurred in my life was being unfaithful to my wife. And I can answer that question by letting you know what that kind of felt like, and how I've grown from that change that I've made. But this week I would answer you, and I would say the biggest challenge I've had in my life has been with honesty. And it's the evolution of my journey, I guess, in the sense that I changed my ways with regard to my faithfulness, but I realized just recently that it's a lot deeper than that. It had to do with my ego and who I thought I was. And that ties into this whole idea of dishonesty. And I think that was my biggest challenge that I ever faced was that I believed I was the image that I had created of myself. And I protected that at all costs. And I violated the trust of my wife, and consequently, I violated who I am, and did a disservice to myself. And so, Sean, what I've really learned over these last few years is that when you realize who you really are, and I believe that I am much more than the ego and the physical person on this planet. I'm a spiritual being as well, who isn't bounded by time and space. Then you realize that, my gosh, what I was protecting and who I was living is as great as some of the aspects of it may have been. And for me, some of those great aspects were financial freedom, power position, opportunity in all kinds of different places. When you live in the ego, you believe that that's as good as it gets. And my understanding now is that, oh my gosh, I was missing out on everything. I mean, that's such a small sliver. I can't even quantify it between two fingers. It's so small in terms of what really there is for me and for everybody on this planet. And so my realization has been that once I've discovered, and once I have discovered who I truly am, it all dissolves. The dishonesty dissolves, and you realize that you're surrounded by truth, you're surrounded by love, you're surrounded by every single possibility that could ever exist. And that is an amazing feeling, to know that you're part of that you are causal in that, and that you are a small part helping this massive system. So I take the mistakes that I've made and the learning that I have incurred, and I put them all together, and I think it's one of the reasons why our business is flourishing. I think it's one of the reasons why my relationship is flourishing. It's one of the reasons why I feel better every day about life and community and people. But I can't think of a bigger example than that one example of a challenge that I have overcome or am overcoming as I discover more. And it's like I thought to myself before answering this question, do I go down this road? I've mentioned it a few times, but the answer is yeah, you do have to go down this road, because it's the single biggest learning experience of your life, pal. And I'm talking to myself here. And it's like, okay, well, I'm still growing as a result of the discoveries that I continue to make. And that is profound, and it's invigorating, and it makes me want to live, and it makes me want to continue to be the best human being that I can be. So as you can see, I'm getting emotional just talking about it, but I'm genuinely feeling the emotions, and these are great emotions. These are emotions of, wow, this is much more powerful than me, who I truly am connected to, and what I truly am. So that would be the biggest challenge overcome, and lesson that I continue to be gifted and learn from.
Thank you very much for sharing that. It takes a really big heart and a big person to be able to share things like that. I know a lot of people wouldn't do that, and that's kind of an embodiment of what we want to bring to the table on the show, is to kind of remove a lot of those barriers that people will kind of put up. Everybody leaves their home every day. I say this a lot on the show, I call it a facade or a shield or whatever you want to call it. And you don't let other people in, especially, you just come across like we've never met before. It's the first time we're meeting, but yet if we remove those barriers, we're able to have deep, meaningful conversations, stuff that people want to hear, stuff that people want to listen. And we all get to learn. We learn from from each other. And anybody who's listening to the show right now has learned a shitload, I'll tell you that much. And a lot about life in general as well, too, more than just getting to know and talking about business, but, going a lot deeper in conversation, and the humility to be able to be vulnerable like that actually shows a lot of honor and a lot of courage. That's something I deeply respect about you. So thank you very much for sharing that. I could also, kind of echo the humility standpoint. That's something I never had when I was younger. I was good at everything. I was good at sports. I was good at scoring goals in hockey, and I always had to boast about my success. And it wasn't until I got into a leadership position within the automotive industry that I quickly learned that people don't want to hear about that. And so carrying yourself with a lot of humility is my daily struggle. I think I do a pretty good job at it, but it's definitely something I have to constantly work on every single day, at making sure that's like, no, people don't know, just they'll see it. You don't need to say it. But I am a big attention person. So I like the spotlight. I like when people tell me good things. So it's been something I've had to learn. It's been a little bit of a life struggle for me, or a hardship I've had to learn the hard way, when people wouldn't tell you, the specifics. You kind of learn it on your own, whether they didn't have the specifics at the time, or if it was something that they weren't willing to share. But I had to kind of figure that out on my own. So it's been a little piece for me.
Thanks for sharing that, Sean, and thanks for your kind comments. Marcy and I were on a business call yesterday, and she said to a provider of ours, she said these words, I'm the kind of person who wants to have my cake and eat it too, right? And I love that about Marcy, and I feel that we're capable of having that, exactly what Marcy's saying. And there's nothing wrong with sharing how many goals you scored when you were in junior A hockey or Atom A hockey, whatever it happens to be. When you share with enthusiasm and you really mean it and you're really jazzed by it and it means something to you, then that energy is receptive. Like that energy has the ability to attach itself to somebody. And so they end up sharing something with you, and that conversation gets richer. And so you can have that cake and eat it too. You can actually speak about your successes in a way that comes from a place of humility and comes from a place of love, right? And so, when I look at some of the great business mentors in life, like somebody like Tony Robbins, I'm always analyzing, like, what's he saying? What's the root of what he's saying? Where is it coming from? And oftentimes Tony's telling you about how successful he is. And it's like, well, that's not being boastful. That's coming from a place of love. I want to show you that you can do it too. I want to show you my formula for getting there. And so we can speak glowingly about ourselves and still be humble. And that's that took a while to figure out as well, right? But it's got to come from that place of love as opposed to that place of ego, right? And I think that's what you're getting at, was you realized you were in this place of ego, and so you're like, okay, I'm going to come at it in a more humble way, in a more connected way, and that's why you're thriving. That's why you were in a position of leadership. That's why you own a business today and you're helping countless people, because you come at it from a place of love. And I think that's where we come from in our business.
Well said. What's one thing that you wish our listeners knew about your business?
Oh, geez. I think, that we're the real deal. Like, you work with us and we have these kinds of conversations privately with you. We have group calls, as we say, but we also meet privately with our writers constantly. And we're in your manuscript, once a week at least, going through, reading your writing. So you're not working with a big company. It's just us, right? It's just us. We got some project manager. We got an accountant. We got a website person. We got a few things, right? But this is who you're with, is me and Alex. So if you like us and you want to tell a story and get the story out, you're not going to meet two people who are going to handle it with more love and respect and caring than us. And I think that's the thing. Some people have interviewed us and they're like, I've interviewed so many book coaches and I never connected. I feel like you see us. And one of my big goals in life is to see, hear, remember everyone that I meet. Right. And that's all we ever want, is to be seen, heard, and remembered. And that's the love and attention that we put into each and every client. They start out as a client, they end up as a lifelong friend, and we wouldn't want it any other way. I don't know if you have something to add there, Alex.
Yeah, I think I would add that I would want people to know that you'll grow. And I say that from experience. There isn't a writer who we've worked with that hasn't grown in some way, shape, or form. And I don't know that we're ultimately responsible for that growth. I think it's the space that we create that allows for that growth to happen. And it's the person who is in that space who does the growing for themselves. But what we do so well is create a space that's conducive to creativity, that's conducive to vulnerability, that's conducive to learning, that's conducive to growth. And bar none, everybody grows when they work with us at Working Writers Co. That's what I want people to know.
100%. Yeah. One of our writers was about 4 months in with us, and he said, my wife said I'm nicer.
Yeah, I love it.
But we see this every time. And the woman who was writing the breast cancer book about her breast cancer journey said, I don't think people understand how good you are at holding space for sad stories or difficult stories, that we can come to you broken and lost and sad, and you help us turn it into something enlightening or triumphant. I don't think people know that, and you need to tell people that. Well, I don't really know. I mean, other than right now, I don't know how else to say it.
Well, we're happy that we could be that vehicle to help you tell that story. A bunch of awesome human beings. One of the best conversations I've ever had on the GNP. Thank you so much for coming on. That was a lot of fun. And if anybody's interested, they want to know a little bit more about you guys, get some more information, what's the best way that they can go ahead and do that?
They can check us out on our website. Our website is evolving. It's okay. It's not where we want it to be, but it's still okay. And it's www.workingwriters.co, not com.co, workingwriters.co. And alternatively, you can catch us on Instagram. What's our channel, Marcy, on Instagram?
It's just Working Writers Co. Working Writers Co. And then on LinkedIn, probably Alex's LinkedIn page is better. I'm rarely on LinkedIn. Sorry, I'm embarrassed to say it.
And then lastly, if you wanted to get a hold of us personally, just email us. It's alex@workingwriters.co and marcy@workingwriters.co. And you can get a hold of us that way as well.
Awesome stuff. Well, again, thank you very much for coming on the show. Really cool conversation. Definitely trust and influence has been built here today. You guys are wonderful people. I wish you guys all the best. Really happy to spread your message and looking forward to doing this down the line.
Hey, Sean, thank you for hosting us. You're an awesome interviewer. You hold a beautiful space as well. And that's another thing we have in common. Well done, and keep doing what you're doing. I think that you offer a tremendous service for the community at large to be able to investigate and immerse themselves, people in business ideas and life ideas. Thank you.
Oh, thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Good Neighbor Podcast Midhurst. To nominate your favorite local businesses to be featured on the show, go to gnpmidhurst.com. That's gnpmidhurst.com or call 705-413-3775.